Okay, we are live here, August 31st, 2024, Infinite Plane, Saturday night. Generally, we try to do these earlier in the day, but I've been working on the Insider. Many of you have seen the rough draft for the cover, but you pretty much have seen what it's going to look like, and the publication date is scheduled for tomorrow. So after this, I'm going to be up editing, writing a couple more articles, but mostly just polishing stuff that's been published that you may have read on blogs, but things that I think are relevant to what we're doing here, because it's not just any tabloid. It's the only tabloid that's ever told the truth, which is simply that the media is a liar and you cannot trust it as an authority. And this is not just a partisan statement, but it's really a statement about perception and how much of your perception has been outsourced. And when you find out that the outsourcers cannot be trusted because they confabulate, manipulate, and lie, that takes a little time to, I think, appreciate the scope of it. And most people can't or won't, which is fine. You know, if you get your information downloaded directly into your brain by Big Brother, if you have no mental immune system, if you have mind aids, in other words, that's really your responsibility. We've been inoculated. Every listener of Infinite Plane Radio, whether you're a subscriber or not, whether you are part of our Discord server or not, I would consider you all to be more or less mind war inoculated. Like, think, when was the last time a news story triggered you? I thought 10-7 might have been triggering, but then I saw all the hyper-realistic mass casualty dolls, the rubber dolls, and the inconsistencies, the bad acting, the video game footage conflated with news, and nobody believes anybody's propaganda anymore. And I realized, okay, this is the strategy. They can no longer monopolize a uniform truth, but they can drown us in a sea of competing belief systems that are all off base, none of them rooted in reality. That's why I'm not even interested in voting. I'm not trying to dissuade anybody, but it's not just that it's an exercise in futility. It's that I'm not going to vote for somebody who is part of the program, wittingly or not. And it's worse if they're dupes. I'm not voting for Truman. I'm not voting for someone who's entirely boxed in and insulated from the truth. But that's where people are at. And that movie, Fly Me to the Moon, did make the point of saying that Nixon wasn't in on the hoaxery, which makes a lot of sense. All right, let's see who has joined us. And phones are open, by the way. Let me put the number on the screen. It's 505-510-4226. And 505-510-4226. Call with comments, complaints, insights, random bits of information that we might find interesting. All right, joined by Diana South at DLive, Ted Stryker, LAC, Roxy W, Reverse History, Gematria 101, Lando Rock, Ollie Goering, AJ206, Flozik. Ted Stryker says, Insider pick looks promising. Yeah, I have a very specific format that I'm doing. I'm not going with the traditional layout. I have an idea here, and it has to do with making these tabloid issues timeless. In other words, I don't want them to be tied to a certain news cycle, but rather something that you could pick up later, years later, and still find valuable info. I'll be including mind maps, memes, metascript, predictive programming, and it's all high definition. The print that we use, the print quality is all high definition laser printing. I have many examples because this isn't my first time attempting to launch a tabloid, and we did do a AI generated tabloid called Conspiratainment for some time, but now I think we have a viable marketing strategy to make this thing work to where, yeah, I think I could do a monthly. And if I have to present it digitally first, I'm fine with that. It might just take a little while to get enough subscribers to purchase, but the nice thing is they will be available on back order all the time. Because again, they're not tied in, like we're not plugged in to the present news cycle. We've stepped back. Ted Stryker says, I actually listen to the news more now for stories and then try to figure out what's real, maybe, or not. I listen because I want to know what the various boxes are focused on. So, what do the truthers think right now? What is their current thing? What is the current thing in Woketown? And where are the normies at? And it's important to understand these three frames of reference as we evaluate the strategy of the programmers. And what is pretty clear to me, based on predictive programming, etc., is this reoccurring theme of the rise of Kamala Harris, predicted in a number of movies. We were talking about these last night, like DMZ, like the Civil War movie, but this is all scripted. Betty Pearson and Fallout. But we're looking at not eerie coincidences, but a form of marketing. That's really what we're looking at. It's just propaganda, but it's subtle. It involves a lot of apparent post-hypnotic suggestion. Like, it shouldn't be legal, but who are you gonna complain to? You know, this is built into the structure of mediation itself. What they don't want are skeptics. That's the one thing that's not allowed. They don't want skeptics. They don't want people with mind war inoculation, mental immunity. And shortly after I coined the phrase mind aids, there was this group that came out and they went throughout the left-wing podcast circuit, and they're called the Mental Immunity Project. And I thought, that's the last thing they want. They don't want news consumers on any side of the political horseshoe to be capable of discerning real from fake. They want everybody susceptible to mind viruses, which leaves everybody vulnerable because nobody has a mental immune system, so they have to have one handed to them. And that's where you get into this conversation of censorship. And as we've said, X, Twitter becoming X, is the vector for disease X, the placeholder virus that the WHO said would knock down the world, the big one. Yeah, the big one is the mind virus, and it's coming from the right. Joined by Portal Complex, Messianic Charlatan, Elephant Tusks, Lord Dorkington. Appreciate the support, all of those who contribute to the channel. We've been very consistent, and we're going to be more so. And yeah, the print tabloid has to be out there because, well, for a few reasons. One, I'm putting QR codes. So, for example, on one page, I might have 5 or 6 album covers for the various songs that we play with a QR code. So readers can scan it and download the MP3. So what's somewhat groundbreaking about this Insider is that it's reciprocal with the digital version. And everything you see in the print version can be found online and accessed, which makes it, I think, more useful as well. It's almost as good as a junk drive because look at all these files I have access to. I'm doing a little bit of transcription on my conversation I had with Woo's News. And Woo's News, by the way, has a Act 3 that he's working on, but he's not quite there. But I had a conversation with Woo's News about January 6th. So I'm going to transcribe part of it and then have a link so people can go to the Rumble video and download it. Okay, continuing. Yes, Dinah South, the hard copy news that can't be erased with an algorithm. Exactly. That's the whole point. And I know this is a good idea because I've tested it. I've looked at the numbers, the various companies that can provide the services of drop shipping, etc. And the Onion, of all, you know, Onion's like the left-wing Babylon Bee. The Onion is now doing print again. And I think it's because people, there's a few reasons. I have like 10 reasons why I think it's a good idea, but I don't want to list them because I don't want to give the competition any heads up. Elephant Tusk says, I'm curious what Tim thinks the purpose of life. I have my own answers and understanding, but I'm interested in his. 42. Joined by Esteban. Lord Laney says, I wonder if Orwell was a warning or a mockery. Yeah, the fascinating thing about Orwell is that his dark, doomy prophecy about, oh no, they're going to have total surveillance, it came true, but people want to be surveilled. People are exhibitionists. Nothing is private. Privacy has just been turned into a liability. Like, nothing can be private because we need to know your status on everything. Do you have a bomb in your pants? Do you have a bug in your veins? Do you have a hateful right-wing meme in your mind? They're getting beneath our skin into our mind, but the whole thing is about the destruction of privacy, because privacy means Well, privacy threatens the public. That's the idea. The super spreading, the healthy asymptomatic super spreader of mind viruses is the new threat. Okay, let's see here. Ted Stryker asks about the other musicians. See, I'm glad you asked, because one of the ways that I'm going to promote and maybe even spread the music around is I'm going to put a page in the back of the Insider, like a classifieds, where I'll have the album cover, the track, and then a downloadable link. And this will also include, for example, I was on a Bonversation last month. I'll put a link to the Bonversation episode and maybe some blurb, some quotes. But it has to be reciprocal. It has to connect to the web. And it's going to contain a lot of artwork. And I have, actually, some of you have submitted artwork. It's all going in. We want it to be something people will hang on to. I have issues of the weekly world news. Some of them are like yellow on the edges. And I find that they're funny and relevant today because they're not connected to a news cycle. There's not an agenda. It's just basically entertainment. We're kind of doing the same thing, but instead of fabricating everything, we're reporting on reality, which is stranger than the fictions presented in weekly world news. Like the boy with the donkey face that was really smart or something. Bat Boy. Like, that's crazy, but it's not as crazy as what we've uncovered. People would believe Bat Boy before they believe that the media lies to them on this scale. People have a lot of confidence and faith. They're in this little bubble. And that's alt media, for sure. They think that they've escaped the bubble, but they're in an alternate bubble. That's one of the main things I've been kind of trying to get across here. And AutoHoaxCon, this September 28th, here in Albuquerque, Zoom conference for anybody who's not here. AutoHoaxCon is going to be an opportunity to convey all of the important ideas and takes on the world stage, what it is, what psyops are, what events are fake and how fake, from the correct side of the screen. So this is a kind of a show of force. We have to kind of somewhat gang up. Like, media skeptics do have to separate from the non-skeptical red pill and hopium addicts, because that's just a lot of noise. You know, I'm trying to get away from the noise and the chaos, which is part of the strategy. They want to drown out the rational voices. Scott Rankin says, print and DIY zines were pre-internet. Remember the zine catalog? Yes. Well, here's something else to consider. We're talking about a way to share information again that people are already used to. You know, people used to share DVDs or CDs and junk drives, like kind of person to person. And this has that capability, as well as, I mean, you could hand somebody an article that they'll read before they'll go to a website. And I think this is another thing too, is it's easy to get lost in the weeds with someone who's new to the subject and you're trying to explain something. And it's like, you've been studying this stuff, looking very closely for years. You recognize now the purpose of what we see as predictive programming, and they're just way behind the curve. So it might be nice to have reference material to point at. And the tabloid will be an opportunity to have like a repository of predictive programming examples in your face. And that's one of the things I'm including here, because a lot of what we talk about is symbol literacy. So we can include pretty much many things that, and from the beginning, I recognize that movies are a valuable source of information because it has the narratives, the programming, but these are things that everyone has some familiarity with. So when we talk about these references from various movies or books, you can actually kind of get people who've read these things to understand what we're talking about. You know, one time is happenstance, twice is coincidence, 3 times enemy action. That's Ian Fleming, James Bond. And that's the whole thing. Predictive programming exists. The people who are in denial of it are just naive and foolish. It's there. The people who are calling it eerie coincidences are at least acknowledging it, even if they don't have the right answer. We do have the right answer. Kevin Mooring says Tucker is CIA verified. Yeah, let's talk about Tucker for a moment, because last night I had mentioned that there is this programming targeting the right wing to have everything closed. Close your skin, lock your doors, xenophobia, close your borders, and now they're being told to be scared of aliens. So you have this quarantine mentality on the far right that mirrors the left's concepts of quarantine for different reasons, moral panic versus virus panic. But the aliens, similarly, are looked at by each side with a completely different outlook, because the right wing closed up is afraid of aliens, illegal and extraterrestrial. But left wing, obviously open borders, open skin, but they are also open to aliens. They essentially worship aliens. This is all throughout the left, the worshippers in the cult of Nasatology. So here you have Tucker Carlson, believes the U.S. government has entered into an agreement with entities that are aliens. Now let me go ahead and play this. And he says that these are forces and they're not human.
On a fair amount of evidence that they're not aliens. They've always been here. And I do think it's spiritual. That's my view. So, and again, it's not provable, but based on the evidence, I think.
I'm with you.
But if the U.S. government has in fact had direct contact with these beings, whatever they are, I've already told you what I think they are, and has entered into some sort of agreement with them, which is the claim of informed people, I would say, whether they're right or wrong, I can't say conclusively. But if that is true, I mean, it's a very, very, very heavy thing.
Yeah.
This is Tucker Carlson babbling, building it up. Timcast IRL, alien nonsense. But they're pushing it for a reason. That's why we're watching it. But I'm pointing out here that the right wing is being taught to fear the illegal aliens. And they'll say, yeah, they're from far away and they're dark and they're military age. And it's like, well, what are you talking about? You know, which aliens? And I'm saying that this is a fear tactic. This is xenophobia taken to a new level.
A lot of people say interdimensional beings.
Right, I want to ask, are angels and demons, or how would you describe these beings?
You know, these are, again, I'm getting into the realm of conjecture, so I just want to say that flat out.
Entity?
But one thing I know for a dead certain fact, having seen it, is that there is good and evil, that we're being acted upon at all times. And I think every person can feel that in himself. I mean, there are moments when you are...
He's getting really preachy these days about good and evil. And he never quite says what he believes explicitly. It's a lot of this building up and hype. Like, he would be a great coast-to-coast type host here. But the fact of it is, aliens were invented by the Air Force. It's a myth. They're a construct to replace angels. Angels for the believers in traditional religion. Aliens are the angels for the new paradigm, for the progressives.
Are moved to do things that are much better than you actually are, and that are also more evil and destructive than you actually are. You are subject to forces from outside yourself. That is absolutely true. Now, we can argue about what they are, but every person in the room, if he's reflective, will tell you.
Okay, let me see if I can get to the purpose here. Word salad, word salad, word salad, word salad, word salad. Okay, here we go. He says we're in some kind of an alien ant farm.
When you think about it, sort of make you think we live in an ant farm.
Yeah.
Being right? And that's that is real.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's many.
All right. No evidence, just conjecture. Aliens, demons, entities. Now, good versus evil. Obviously, this means that Tim Pool and Tucker Carlson are the good guys, which means the Democrats are the bad guys. Aliens bad. Axiom number 47. Autohoaxology Axiom 47. If any of these major issues has a perfectly split down the middle, bifurcated interpretation along political lines, it's a hoax. Okay, let's see. Elephant Tusk says, do you think they release sci-fi films so everyone believes the concepts are shown are fiction? Hiding truth in plain sight? Convince the masses everything is fiction? I think science fiction fills in for the area of cosmography within the worldview. It's part of the mythology, where we came from, where we're going, who's higher than us. And the entire space thing in the space opera genre, this is all, I think, just worldview building. It's filling your imagination so that when they point to a concept, you have it in your mind. Like, they've programmed you through repetition to automatically assume the Earth is an object, a discrete object, and then they work out from there. But you never have any conceptions of it outside of it being, in science fiction, the basic map they've given us. So it's more like worldview imprinting. And I find science fiction to be very interesting. I read a lot of it. It's fascinating how dystopian it is, which is also part of the design, because they want to project this idea that if we continue down this path, the world's going to die. Specifically, capitalism, Western values, AR-15s. Slick Rick says JL coming back later tonight. Possibly. I meant to watch his latest video. Okay, catching up on comments. Kevin Mooring says Art Bell was an OP or gatekeeper IMO. I would suggest that he might have been gatekept by a lack of knowledge that was accessible. I think a lot of people are just insulated, specifically the programmers. I don't think they want any programmers that could potentially endanger the entire operation. Everything that's critical would be on a need-to-know basis. But I do think that the gatekeepers may just be gatekeeping on more or less because you're hitting the limit of what they know and what they're willing to talk about. Like a lot of the people who are unwilling to question NASA, and I'm not even suggesting, hey, the Earth is flat. I'm just saying their spaceball imagery is all just cartoonish and fake. Like that's obvious. But a lot of people won't entertain that. It doesn't mean they know the truth. Like they know what's behind the big deception. No, they're programmed. The programming class are just as programmed as the normies. They're just selectively deprogrammed in whatever area, whatever they're let in on. But Art Bell did write the first climate fiction book. It was with Whitney Strieber, the guy who wrote the Alien book, Communion, about the guy who gets a ride in a flying saucer and gets probed. I have to read it, I guess. But Strieber and Art Bell wrote a book called The Coming Global Superstorm. So from the very beginning, he was tied into this idea of climate change. And I think also Art Bell's show is where chemtrails got its start. Okay, catching up. Roxy says Tucker is a shiny, cheap tool. Yeah, that's true. We talked about it last night. The Riddler, and the old Riddler actually laughs just like Tucker, or Tucker laughs like the Riddler. But the new Batman movie has the Riddler character who's basically like a Q-type, but he has a weapon called a Tucker. It's like a carpenter's tool. And when the Batman movie came out, you had some mass shooter, and he got radicalized by Tucker. That was the explanation. Tucker sent the shooter. So they're just mirroring this idea of people going online, getting radicalized, and killing. Okay, I'm catching up on comments. Let me go ahead and go through the rest of my notes. We just listened to Tucker Carlson trying to scare people about aliens. And of course, this is the real reason why the flat earth question has been stymied and maligned and not treated fairly, because it's a valid question. It's not an assertion. It's not a model. It's a question, a simple question. You know, can you trust this source when you can discern that it's lying here, here, and here? But, you know, besides that, if you go that far and you question the heliocentric model itself, the idea of aliens from Venus coming over here to steal the water is kind of laughable. So they need you to believe in the official science fiction paradigm so that you'll buy into whatever story's coming next. And I think this alien drama isn't going to be like physical aliens invading us, but I think it's just a way of programming us to accept the illegal alien invasion ubiquitously. In other words, the dissolution of national borders, which is what the astronauts always talk about when they say that they got so high and they looked at the Earth and they couldn't see national borders. They just saw one world to save. That's the future. The alien invasion is when we reach this one world status where everybody's on the same page, level playing field, no nations, everything absorbed into one. That's also why they call aliens grays because they represent, as a symbol, it represents the culmination of all these Hegelian dialectics, black versus white. The polarities merging, you mix black and white, you get gray. It represents the victory, the synthesis. That's what's coming. So the aliens are not going to come from anywhere else. It's always just been a way of conveying a story. And if you look at all the alien stories, it's always the same thing. It's always about mankind uniting. Okay, let's continue. Riley says it's aliens from Mars stealing water too. Flozik says aliens are real, but they don't live on Earth. They live in... Yeah, you know, NASA makes all kinds of jokes about that planet. NASA makes more jokes, plays more hoaxes, and that's what they do. Space chorizo, bad puns involving a planet with a ridiculous name. And it's just mispronounced anyway when people attempt to make jokes about it. But I don't even want to read NASA's headlines. Puerile. And we pay them billions of dollars for this stuff. Okay, back on track here. Phones are open, 505-510-4226. Oh, Tom Cruise bought some land through this lunar embassy. He bought some land on the moon. His space interest extends to projects like filming on board the ISS, reflecting his adventurous spirit. And if you recall, he showed up at the Paris Olympics, and he descended. He rappelled 42 meters down from the roof. This ties in with his archetypal role as the falling man, the hanged man. It's a recurring thing, the man who fell to Earth. This is Major Tom, you know, Space Oddity, ground control to Major Tom. The first music video filmed in space was Space Oddity by Chris Hadfield singing it. There's a David Bowie song. Well, Tom Cruise is going to be the first civilian to do a spacewalk. And my contention here is that the song Space Oddity is a reference to Tom Cruise going up to the ISS and possibly dying in space. And I say this because he has already died in space in South Park. Here he is dead on the moon. And then Major Tom is shown in David Bowie's posthumous album Black Star. In one of the music videos, you see Major Tom in an astronaut suit, but he's dead. He's just a skeleton. And there's this cult of cat people on the moon that do these bizarre rituals and worship the skull. Normal stuff. And I don't think David Bowie's dead, by the way. One of the most obvious deep fakes. And I think that's also an inside joke tying into the song Lazarus. It's kind of an interesting story if you look at how the David Bowie character mirrors David Bowman from Space Odyssey, and how this character has mirrored man's journey into the space age, our collective space odyssey. Like the BBC played that song when they aired Apollo 11. His music has always been a part of it. His song was the first song to be recorded in space. Elon Musk sent Starman, which is a David Bowie effigy, to orbit the sun. But it's playing a David Bowie song, Starman, on an infinite loop. So there's a car floating through space playing a David Bowie song. So what I'm saying is that it's a ritual of some kind. It's not insignificant. It's all interconnected. The 42 meters going down, obviously the 42 is connected with a lot of this stuff having to do with space. And when you're orbiting, you're technically falling. Let me see if I can find this, make sure I got the right song. Yeah, it says here, the song is Starman. And of course, Starman is an anagram for Mr. Satan, which I think is a reference to the man who fell to Earth. But anyway, Tom Cruise is going to the space station, and I think he's going to die on the moon, or somehow get lost. Maybe he's going to do a spacewalk, and he's not going to have the cord, because he likes to do stunts. He's always dangling off of cliffs, hanging off of planes, motorcycling off of cliffs. He's always parachuting, sitting on top of the wing of the plane. He's a stuntman. Now, and I don't think you can take that away from him. You know, he may be participating in psyops. He may be an insider. He's definitely in fact, he has to be high-level Illuminati warlock. There's no way of explaining his role in this thing because, and if you can call Jack Parsons a warlock, hanging out with L. Ron Hubbard and Marjorie Cameron, the Horror of Babylon incarnate in their ceremonies, then yeah, you would have to say that Tom Cruise is similarly a warlock because he's the Jesus Christ of Scientology. And you see all the same occult stuff around all of his movies. It's in his life, divorcing all his wives at 33, 11 years apart. Just his whole life is eyes wide shut behind the scenes. It has to be. And you can't separate Scientology from Mystery Babylon, from the OTO, this Templar order, and all of its rites. It's just dressed up with science fiction. So when I say that the mainstream religion is Nasatology, I am not even joking. It's 100% true. And it's just the same religion as Scientology, essentially. In fact, they're very similar when you really get into the fundamentals. Because ultimately, Scientology is about mind virus purification, total mind control. Mind control by world view curation. Okay, let's see here. Elephant Tusk says, wasn't the man who fell to Earth about them trying to steal the Earth's water? Yes. Absolutely. And the alien calls himself Tom Newton, and he lands here in New Mexico. Mirrors Bezos in several ways, which we've talked about recently. Forms his own Amazon-type company and goes back to Mars. Ollie Goering says, blood tax in Mars for the BRICS. Yeah, I would like to start this, but I don't know where I'd put it. But I would like to start taking blood donations for future Martians. Like, if you want to go to Mars and you can't afford a ticket, you can start donating blood because they're going to make astrocrete out of it. You take the Mars regolith, the dust, you mix it with blood, and you have something called astrocrete. Apparently, it's better than concrete. They're going to do it on the moon, too. And I thought, you just might as well, because you can't send bricks to Mars. You're trying to build infrastructure, and you can't send the stuff on the rocket. Everything has to be accounted for. It's just too expensive. But you can regularly use your blood. And it sounds kind of, grotesque, but if you think about it, I think it's part of the idea of blood and soil brought back. Like the first people to colonize Mars are going to be able to have this bond with the soil. But yes, cosmic concrete from space, dust, and astronaut blood. Affordable housing in outer space. This is from Manchester.ac. Scientists develop, and it's not just blood, it can be your sweat and other body fluids. But this is a thing, and it's to solve the idea of transporting bricks. But I'm like, why not just start donating this stuff? If I believed in outer space and I was going to be an entrepreneur in it, I would get into space junk reclamation and a blood drive for future Martians. Okay, space concrete using astronaut blood. It says here, in order to create human habitats on Mars, we must overcome the expensive engineering challenges. Transporting building materials from Earth would be cost prohibitive. So scientists at the University of Manchester in UK came up with a solution that involves rock and dust found on Mars mixed with blood, sweat, and tears. Not too hygienic, but the unusual kind of space concrete could be used to create homes for future astronauts. This is the ultimate in sustainability. Like, the guy that started Earth Day, the unicorn killer, is that they call him? His name was Einhorn. He composted his girlfriend. Like, that's how, he's like a saint of greenness. I mean, how green is that? How sustainable is that? Recycling people. And that's what they're talking about here. And apparently it's because there's a protein in your blood, plasma, that acts as a binder. It says, we believe that human serum albumin, extraterrestrial regolith, biocomposites could have a significant role in a nascent Martian colony. And here's a 3D printed version of it, which looks disgusting. And don't use the plasticware. Tell it to Tom Cruise, don't use the plasticware. You don't want to know what astrocrete is made out of. And now that's pretty bad, but then look at the astroplastic. They do recycle everything. Kevin Mooring says notifications just went out. I sent them a while ago. Talmudoid3 says Tesla playing Bowie and Bowie played Tesla. Yeah, I thought that was a connection. The Tesla Roadster had a number of fascinating elements to it, this whole ritual. You had the David Bowie Starman, Mr. Satan. You have Bowie as Nikola Tesla in the Prestige, and then he's in the whole Tesla connection there. But the lightning bolt on his face, very significant. But also on the dash it said, "Don't panic," which is from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And "Don't panic" has some very special significance in the bigger picture. But the 42, the number 42 as the answer to everything, comes out of that particular book, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. LAC says, I only use Facebook and I try to wake up friends and family. They all think I'm nuts. The truth of it is they are. Like, you can be confident in this. This isn't Dunning-Kruger. This is skeptics versus non-skeptics. And they've been told that they have the intellectual and moral high ground because they trust the news. Which is, it's just the opposite, because the truth of it is, the more immersed you are in it, the more of a liar it makes you. And not only does it make you a liar, you're now complicit in mind war, in terrorism. Like, you're basically a financer of global terrorism if you are a true believer in its church. Because that's all it does. Mind war operates through sustained, kind of low-grade terrorism, psychological abuse. And I'm not on that team. I'm on the other side of the screen. So when they call you crazy, you can just, keep in mind that they don't know what they're doing. You can forgive them. Ryler says, the anime Dragon Ball is about a boy who came from space, Goku, which means Monkey King, and became Earth's savior. There's a character called Mr. Satan who takes the credit. Yeah, this monkey stuff has been fascinating. 8/14, WHO declares monkeypox a big deal globally. Then in Houston, there's a 90-foot tall statue of the monkey that appears, Monkey King. Meanwhile, 1 million people are basically avatars. They're playing the video game concurrently live, where they're all the Monkey King. And then some people are watching HBO with Chimp Crazy. And then on 3/11, the pandemic date, a movie called Monkey Man came out about this violent boxer wearing a monkey mask, and Jordan Peele produced it. And he's the one from Nope, which was inspired by the George Floyd atrocity propaganda bit. And Nope opens up with a chimp killing a bunch of people. We've been looking at the zeitgeist. And if you look at the big picture, you got a monkey loose in Ohio at this time, and then some attorney at the Supreme Court is being attacked by a monkey, and they don't have a first aid kit. Everywhere you go. What is this? Well, this is how they send concerted messages out there, and that's what we're generally examining. What are they conveying here? And in this case, I am pretty certain that they have conveyed that we have entered the age of the mind virus. And as I predicted, we have seen the quarantining of the internet. Brazil cutting X off, Telegram. We're seeing the public acquiescing, agreeing to, and demanding the censorship of the public comments, cyberspace. They have to create a demand for it, because if they just censored us, we would throw a fit. We would not stand for it. People wouldn't like to be overtly censored, just like they wouldn't want to be surveillanced. Nobody wants to be surveillanced 24/7, or they didn't. They had to engineer that into the culture with perception management. This is Edward Bernays' propaganda, the creator of public relations, uncle of the founder and CEO of Netflix, changing public behavior en masse. So they conditioned us to want to be surveilled. So the next phase is to condition us to accept whatever they want that we might resist today by making it attractive. And I'm pretty sure they can convince us of anything at this point. Catching up on comments really quick here. Kevin Morin says, are we going to see those FEMA coffins soon? Yeah, I get to take credit for debunking FEMA coffins, by the way. Does anybody here still believe in FEMA camps? Because let me just fill you in on this. Your FEMA camp is your living room with Netflix on, where you're getting reprogrammed. It's your re-education camp, but it's home. It's decentralized, and you are your own prison warden. And if you're not strict enough with yourself, you probably have some neighbor that can help keep you in line, because we police each other. So they've already put us in our decentralized FEMA camps, and so it's not going to get any worse. But does anybody here still believe in FEMA coffins? Going through your comments to see if anybody believes in FEMA coffins. Joe says Walmart's the FEMA camp. That's what they used to say. I wouldn't mind. I've worked at a Walmart, and if you were locked in there, a lot of art supplies, get a lot done. LAC says, what do people think about 15-minute cities? Look, I'm fine with it, as long as it's free travel, and you want that. Who wouldn't want that? What's wrong with it? The idea that you're going to be boxed in is kind of like threatening to some people. But I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to sell you on the idea that you shouldn't want to go any further. Because, of course, your carbon footprint. Nicotrama said, I bet most of us believe the FEMA coffin story when it was sold to us. Okay, I'm trying to figure out if anybody here believes in it still. Because I have debunked it. I live in a 1-minute city, so I can't talk. I can't say anything disparaging about 15-minute cities. I have, within 1 minute, a library, grocery store, gym, and everything else that I need. The gas station's actually opening up right there. I don't need to go anywhere further than that, and I can do it all on foot. The office is across the street. I can actually see my place from the window here, and everywhere else that I go, I can see from the window here. And this is purposeful. I thought it made a lot more sense if I'm going to maintain continuity and do what we're doing. I need to make sure that even if somebody steals my catalytic converter and tries to jack my truck, I won't be cut off from being productive here. So when it comes to FEMA coffins, I never fell for it because I saw the images on InfoWars and they said, oh, these are FEMA coffins. And I thought, if they're going to kill us all, are they going to give us funerals? Like, our NWO troops going to put you in a coffin? Like, a lot of people can't even afford coffins. Like, they just get cremated. So it's like, why wouldn't they just throw you in a pile? So if they're going to kill you all, not only would they not put you in a coffin, because they're expensive, but these FEMA coffins are so big that people say, oh, they put 10 bodies in each one. How are you going to carry 1,000 pounds of dead meat per load? That's insane. The truth of it is, the so-called FEMA coffins are burial vaults. And they put burial vaults over coffins in the ground so that the ground doesn't collapse and crush the coffin and create divots in the... So you're walking through a cemetery. The reason why your foot doesn't sink in and you don't fall down into the hole is because there's a burial vault. And so you see these trucks transporting these burial vaults all the time. And I've actually seen these things in a warehouse here. So I learned about these things a while ago. And then I see people online saying, oh, these are FEMA camp coffins. I try to tell some people about it. I was like, you know what these are? And they said to me that I was lying and that I was blood-drinking Illuminati something. Messianic Charlatan says, Tom Cruise is reputedly in the papal bloodlines Orsini family. Okay, Elephant Tusk says they have a whey water cremation. Absolutely disgusting. I think you can do composting, human composting in California now. I mean, don't do it unless you check your local laws and stuff. But I think they're trying to do some kind of greening of the funeral industry, which would be a good business to get into. It'd be really easy to sell people on the idea that conventional funerals are wasteful and bad for the environment. Truth Hurts says, have you seen the recent tour of Musk's Star Factory? I'll have to take a look. Here it is. Okay, part 2. First look inside SpaceX's Star Factory. I'll take a look. See what the Billionaire Blimp Club is up to. Leo Pirate says, I love how even though I'm subscribed to the bell, I don't get YouTube notifications. Gotta love YouTube. Yeah, YouTube's mad at me, at us. Always have been. I think we've had like 160 channels pulled. Violet says, Monkey Man is just like Goku. So there is something to it. There's something to the monkey thing. There's too many alignments, which we talked about. And speaking of alignments, we're always talking about these various psyops, and I saw one today. We say fake until proven real here, because this one looks real at first. This looks to me like another one of these ear wound or staged ear wounds. This is likely agitprop and fake. So a couple of individuals beat, the way it's framed here, 2 African Americans beat a defenseless white American girl who was wearing a Trump shirt. Real racism. And if you look at her ear, it looks like Trump's ear. Like fake blood is what I'm saying. This looks fake to me. So I watched the video and it looks fake, and everybody in the chat, they're basically saying this is fake. So it looks like they did a Jussie Smollett. Like the Trumpers have done it. This is like, for now we'll just call her, I don't know, Jessie Smollett. But they're yelling mean things at her and kicking her shoes, but there's no real violence, and you don't see what caused the original wound. And again, I'm just seeing the bloody ear thing, and immediately it has my hoax radar ringing. Kevin Morning says, talk about synchronicity. Joker 2 comes out soon. Yeah, Joker 2 comes out on 10/4. The day that Sputnik went into space. Sputnik is the name of the first vax for the COVID virus. Putin released Sputnik 5 in August, the same month that the movie Sputnik came out. And the movie Sputnik was about demonic aliens, just like Tucker Carlson talks about. LAC says Trump calls them freedom cities. The others call them 15-minute cities. Yeah, Trumpers are scared of 15-minute cities, but they'll go live in a freedom city. That's a 15-minute city. It's amazing how that works. Trumpers will say, I don't want a universal basic income, but they're all about that Nisara Gasara money. They don't want that great reset, but they're all about the great awakening. It's like you look at the political horseshoe, and it's a model. It's not just a theory. The political horseshoe they created here, and each side at the fringe is looking at the other side. It's just they're mirrors of one another. Stevie G says, what if they're V-mandated 15-minute cities? Then you have to live outside the city if you're a refusenik, which is fine. I would actually take a shot if it would mean that I wouldn't have to live in the same city as a bunch of propaganda mules, a bunch of chemtrail-phobic anti-vaxxers. It's like, yeah, go ahead, stay outside, go live in the wild with the barbarians, just like in that Demolition Man, where in the future you have the civilized people who are socially distanced and they don't swear because Big Brother's listening and you'll get a ticket. And then outside they're all just barbarians and they've just descended into some Mad Max world. And that's going to be the future. In the future, you're going to either live in the smart cities, the 15-minute cities, or you're going to be out there. Sorry, but I'm anti-anti. Like, I'm anti-pro, but I'm also anti-anti. And I'm actually more anti-anti than I am anti-pro right now, just because I'm so sick of propaganda mules doing Big Brother's dirty work. Ryla05 says, the right has to generate their own victimhood because they know they're the ones who are killing minorities. Interesting take. Elephant Tusk says, fake until proven real. A Tim Osmond story. You could probably have Grok write it. I asked Grok, Grok is the Twitter AI. I said, what is auto-hoaxing? And it 100% understood what we were talking about. Jessica says, do you think Aurora, Colorado gangs taking over apartments is real? I think the story's obviously overhyped. I don't think there's a lot of substance to it. I'm not surprised that there's gang activity. but they're calling them Venezuelan gangs. But it's like there's already gangs. Gang activity is nothing new. But I think they're highlighting Venezuelan because that's been a mainstay of Donald Trump. In fact, he pretty much launched his political career on the idea that Mexican gangs are coming over here to rape and kill. That was his original campaign thing. So the idea that they're Venezuelan means, oh, they came across the border and they're somehow worse than the gangs that are already here. It'd be, if it was real, I almost wouldn't care. They'd probably just cancel out the other guys. Just phase one out, phase one in. But like they're taking our jobs, and even the gangs, oh, they're taking our jobs. The Crips and the Bloods are going to complain. Riley says the Aurora, Colorado thing is fake as well. Most city crime is fake by the news. It's to help inflate police budgets. See, there's a good answer. And I have many examples. I used to be a reader of true crime fiction. And looking at it now, we have to remember, you can spell PSYOP with a $sign. It really is about the money. It's huge about money. Money's a big part of it. Why do you think the crisis actors are always smiling? Nicotrauma says, I can't wait for the GBI. I don't want to work anymore. I'm lazy. Well, if anybody here is not lazy, and I'm not criticizing it, and I know you're not lazy, this is work. But I think there's opportunities all over the place. I really do. And you don't need a universal basic income. And one of the things that I think is a strong possible avenue for some people who might be entrepreneurial is the soon-to-be parallel media economy. And that's one of the reasons why we need to break away from alt media, because all those ads, all those subscriptions, it's all going into the propaganda machine that serves the world view construct that we know to be distorted and bent. So the sooner we break away, I think the sooner there'll be some openings here. And that's one of the reasons why I'm getting back into publishing. But we'll observe this as it unfolds. But I think there's a large group of people who are not even aware of what they've been denied their entire lives. There's never been a platform for media skeptics, for critical thinkers. There hasn't been. And what happens is the main and the alt media leadership, all their influencers, flatter their listeners. Oh, you're so smart because you're listening to us. The other guys are dummies. And they all say it. So each side thinks it's super smart and the other side is super dumb. Meanwhile, both sides are non-skeptical about their own claims. Ryler says the anti-vaxxers are blaming everybody's heart attacks on... Yeah, anti-vaxxers are a cult at this point. And it's totally programming. It has to do with fear. And one more point, because I've been talking about the moral high ground here. Propaganda mules, like the anti-vaxxers, you have the moral low ground, and if anybody died because of it, it's your fault. Because it's a placebo, if anything. And what happens is you spread the fear, and then people experience what you call there's a couple of different effects. I think one of them is called the nocebo effect. And I think that's the negative effect. Yeah, here it is. A nocebo effect is when the negative expectation causes it to have a worse effect than it otherwise would have. And so I would argue that chemtrail alarmists are also guilty of this. If anybody has any kind of chemtrail lung condition, it's purely psychological, sure. But the cause of it is the truther who spread the fear about the false or the fake threat. That's kind of what they're doing. They're part of the fear ecosystem. Okay, let's see. Jessica Lynn says it's not a placebo. Yeah, I don't think so. I really just reject the whole thing. And it's all ad hoc. It's all basically, when it comes down to the arguments, it's anecdotal. And it's also plugging you into their fear matrix. I just totally dispense with it. I'm anti. But I'm anti-pro. So I'm not on your side, but I'm not on the other person's side either. I think it's low-hanging fruit, truth or bait, Alex Jones level conspiracy claptrap. And I don't have time for it. Lord Laney says, I meant to go back and look at it with my Auto Hoaxery glasses, but I think Dragon Ball Z episode 194 or 195 was released on 9/11. Oh, interesting. And had something to do... Let me see if I can find it. So Dragon Ball Z episode, we'll go 194. From Free the Future, Dragon Ball Z. I'll look into this because I think you might have guessed it right here. You remembered correctly. I'll look through it and I'll take some screen caps. I have it bookmarked. Thanks for the lead. It's everywhere. Okay, moving on. Armin Ree says, seriously, who won the Mega Powers versus Twin Towers wrestling match back in 1989? Good question. Will we see an election, says Kevin Mooring. I'm open to the possibility, and I have a little bit of hope on this, that November the 3rd. I mean, there was more than a few channels that were dedicated to this body of predictive programming pointing at Seattle, November the 3rd, getting the nuke. And this is like very consistent with all that we have seen. But November the 3rd, it didn't happen. And the following 3/11, Seattle was ground zero for the bat virus thing. So I'm like, that's interesting. Is it still in play? Well, November the 3rd is 2 days before the election. And there was so much November the 3rd hype. Like, I first started noticing it when in 2020, you had that 32nd team for the NHL, National Hockey League, the Seattle Kraken, put out a trailer that was 1 minute and 13 seconds long. And it looked like an EMP attack on Seattle. That was the Seattle Kraken trailer. So that was in July. The following November the 3rd was the election. And so I thought this date has to be very significant. Twin Towers were replaced by the One World Trade Tower, which was opened up 13 years later on 11/3. Like 11/3 is a very significant number. Columbia, the shuttle Columbia explodes on the 33rd parallel. It was the 113th launch. Space Shuttle Challenger explodes 1 minute 13 seconds. The 113 is all throughout Pixar. Wall-E kind of gives away what it really means. But it's been this reoccurring theme here, 113. And so the Seattle 113 EMP stuff was projected in 2020, but maybe it's referring to this year. Maybe November the 3rd, Seattle's going to get it, and that will disrupt the election. I mean, that would be a great way to stop it. Elephant Tusk says, Waltz's brother said Tim is absolutely effed in the head. Now you're talking about Tim Waltz, not me, right? Joined by Eric Stevens says, Auto Hoax Rafters. Aloha, thank you for joining. Who here plans to even vote, asks LAC. Oh, I'm voting for Harris, if there's an election. Peter W. says, remember the 5th of November. Now, I guess that does have a lot of significance because you've got Alan Moore. Okay, check this out. Alan Moore, major metascriptor. He did V for Vendetta, which had lockdown, pandemic predictions, censorship predictions all over it. It was all about 2020. And it came out in 2005. But The Mask of Guy Fawkes, the patsy for the 5th of November attempt to bomb the... Let me bring that up. Because the Guy Fawkes mask is what a lot of people here are familiar with. The Gunpowder Plot, 1605. Guy Fawkes was a member of a group of English Catholics involved in the failed Gunpowder Plot of 1605. Now, the reason why I think this is interesting, because Alan Moore has some connections here. All of his movies are, well, his graphic novels that become movies are filled up with predictive programming. I learned about Jack Parsons from Alan Moore. I think he was studying Crowley when he was like 12 years old. He's heavily immersed in all of this stuff. But, you know, he brings us V for Vendetta. But then there was something else. There was an Ellen Moore. It was, here it is. She was hit by space junk. There was an episode, let's see if I can find it, that was released on November the 3rd from, here it is. So the drama miniseries Watchmen was based on his comic. And She Was Killed by Space Junk was the 3rd episode. And I was checking it out because it was aired on 11/3. And we were compiling all these examples of November the 3rd being associated with this future agenda. And they introduced space junk killing somebody on this episode, which aired that day. Interestingly, also, we were talking about the space station falling last night. And there's this show on Netflix called The 100. And season 1, episode 13, again, 113, has a space station falling. And they call it the Ark. And the Ark falls from space. And you see it falling, which looks like, you know, like what we saw on the trailer for Megaopolis. But what's more is during that episode, there's a scene where these characters are in this underground bunker. And in this bunker, someone had collected a bunch of artwork to preserve before the world had been destroyed. And among the paintings, there was a painting of the Tower of Babel. And so the Tower of Babel falling has a lot to do with the story of the falling of the space station. But 113, again, consistently associated with these themes. And I think we're looking at a possibility of, if there is a chance it's going to happen, I think the only place it would make sense would be that date. Elephant Tusk says, somebody's abusing their wrench privileges. Okay, I'll take care of that. I don't see it here, but let me know and I'll fix it. You're supposed to abuse the powers responsibly. If you're doing it irresponsibly, you might have your wrench revoked. Rarely happens. But it's almost irreversible because I'm so busy these days. Okay, let's get back on the notes here. There's a new JFK impersonator in town. His name is Edward X. And today he went out and he just basically admitted it. This is JFK Jr. Go and play this clip. Now he's touching his nose because when asked, is JFK Jr. still alive? RFK Jr. touched his nose. And that vindicated many people who had the suspicion. Well, this is supposedly JFK Jr. showing up at his 88th Trump rally.
Hi there. I am Edward X. Young. I'm at my 87th Trump rally here in Washington, D.C. I'm here with the great artist, Scott Lebedo, with his newest painting. But I want to send a message to people out there. Here's the message.
I want to send a message to people. Does that sound like JFK Jr.? And he's touching his nose. What do you call this? Lying? I call it lying. Like Bob Joyce pretending to be Elvis, which is ridiculous. Bob Joyce looks 70. Doesn't even look like Elvis. But there's so many liars. This is ridiculous. But this could be JFK Jr. according to a lot of these date decoders who were wrong about yesterday and the day before and the day before that. And they're blocking me because I'm calling them out as promoting basically Q garbage. Yes. These are basically Q claims, though. But yes, this is, according to them, JFK Jr. So it's not 107. It's not negative 48. It's not Vincent Fuchsia. I'm surprised people fell for that. And it's not Trump or in a JFK and a Trump car. This is so insane. This is schizoid. And this guy's taking full advantage of these gullible dupes who are just hitting the Q pipe too hard.
If you know, you know.
Oh my God.
If you know, you know. Unbelievable. And the irony is they don't know. They don't have a clue. Ryler says, Tim, do you think the Clinton body count thing is probably a fairy tale? Yes. Yes, absolutely. I think the Clinton body count is a hoax. I think it's just there to create fear. Look how much the right is motivated by fear. And the idea of Pizzagate is kind of new, but you can find a lot of old propaganda from when Clinton was in office where Hillary Clinton was being accused of witchcraft. I believe Tex Mars and others, conspiracy writers, they've always demonized them, like in like very literal ways. So the mob type killings that they attribute to them, it's largely just hoaxery. It has to be. Jungle Jim says Saturnday night always better with IPS on the airwaves. SNL, so many psyops come out of that. 33-year-old James Belushi dies. Chris Farley dies at 33. Look at all the 33-year-old. Phil Hartman wasn't 33, but I think he was shot at 333 times. Lots of hoaxery, in the entertainment world where you have these people who kind of bridge the gap and they go into politics, or they're going from entertainment into politics. And it's rumored that Chris Farley became Rob Ford. And it's amazing if you look at the two of them. Same body language. There have been many compilations comparing the two. Very believable if you look at the timing of it as well. But SNL is a major epicenter of approved mind viruses. Like these late night comedy shows. I don't even think it's about comedy, or even if they're funny. Like, is Jimmy Kimmel or Jimmy Fallon funny? Anyone here? I haven't checked in a while. They weren't last time I checked. But it seems like what they do is they float out ideas that you're supposed to reject or approve. And it's just part of this programming with the mob. So here's a meme that you're supposed to hate. It's like the 2 minutes of hate from 1984. Hate this person, hate this idea, approve of this person. And you're at home watching it on TV, but what you're hearing with the audience noises, and they're just clapping seals, and they're looking at the neon sign, clap, don't clap, laugh, boo. They're being programmed to believe that this is the consensus. And they create these false consensuses using these TV shows. Because people are influenced by the mob psychology. Messianic Charlatan says it does sound like JFK Jr. Well, we'll find out apparently. His name was Edward X. And Edward X has been in a number of movies. He's a special effects expert. And one of his movies, I believe it's called Hillary's Worst Nightmare. Like, let me pull this up because this is really weird. His name is Edward X Young. Of course, X is kind of weird in itself. So is this JFK Jr.? Apparently, a lot of people find it believable. Only if this is some kind of mask. The eyes, I don't know if they match, but this is what they're saying. So I was looking into him. He's an actor and a journalist. Edward X. Young has been in a number of movies. Bigfoot the Blood Trap. The Killer Clown. Quite a lot here to unpack. The Green Monster. Mega Man. Now, is that a movie? I didn't know. I'll have to watch that. I happen to like the game. Now, we're looking at JFK Jr. This is what he was doing. He faked his death in 1999 to make movies like Attack of the Killer Chickens, Bleep, A Serial Killer's Dog, Demented Doctors, The Cannibal Killer, Maggots. This is what JFK Jr. has been doing, and he's of the bloodline of Christ, and he's going to save the world from the deep state. But between now and then, he's going to make movies like Psycho Sisters Possessed, Jerry the Psychopath, Chad's Dental Nightmare, Camp Blood 666, Creepy Clowns, Head Twister Heckler, a sideshow of psychosis, Flesh for the Beast. Again, JFK Jr. has been busy, very, very busy. Zombie Hunter, City of the Dead, I Spill Your Guts. I guess we have to watch all of these for predictive programming. Like if you're a QAnoner and you can't sleep because you're hitting the Q pipe, you could probably stay up and watch a lot of these. Oh, this one looks good. Burn in Hell. The Green Monster. Anyway, charming. He's 6'2", born in 1959. How tall is JFK Jr.? Anyway, we'll keep an eye on this character. There's a good chance he's a grifter. There's a good chance that the man on the screen isn't John F. Kennedy Jr. There's a slight chance that he's not. So don't get your hopes up. Another actor like Ashley Babbitt, says Kevin Mooring. LAC says, so many JFK impersonators, I can't keep up. Yeah, there were many false Kennedys. Isn't that one of the signs of the times, that it's the end? Many false Kennedys. And that is their assertion. Matthew 24, for there shall arise false Kennedys, false gematria prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, and they will deceive many. Yep, it's in the Bible. I slightly Mandela affected it. Messianic Charlatan says, similar voice from his Leno appearance about Monica's... Oh yeah, Monica Lewinsky's pizza thing. Yeah, that was bizarre. There's this episode of Jay Leno where John F. Kennedy Jr. is reading a letter that was sent to Bill Clinton by Monica Lewinsky when she was 12. And it was about how she wanted to be eaten like a piece of pizza. So think about Pizzagate. So it's already kind of weird. But then it's John F. Kennedy Jr. reading this letter and mocking her. That's another thing. They're mocking. It's like, I think it's a little questionable. It's a questionable poem. Let me go ahead and play it. Very cryptic. Okay, here we go.
Monica Lewinsky's poem that she wrote in 9th grade. Actually, not in 9th grade, when she was a 9-year-old. And I know I'm going to rot in hell eternally for this, but...
Okay, John F. Kennedy Jr. here, a.k.a. Edward X. Young, thought it would be funny to read the letter of a 9-year-old who was later exploited by Bill Clinton.
But can I maybe just give it a sample?
Yeah, give a sample.
Okay, it was written... The poem is a poignant rumination on how, quote, I can be a delicious lunch, dinner, or breakfast, if you're weird. She goes on to describe herself, quote, as a round and flat piece of dough with lots of topping. I am a mouth's best friend. I make you say, yum, yum.
It's amazing how kids know at a young age what they're going to do with their life.
Okay. Oh, look, Jerry Seinfeld. Okay. Anyway, like I said, these late-night TV shows have always just been conduits for approved ideas and a place to lambast the unapproved ideas, and really just showcasing the psychopathy of the power elite with all these inside jokes. LAC says, my sister is a Oh, yeah. She's a Kool-Aid drinker. Sorry to hear that. She tells my parents that Trump is still president that he's still president undercover. Yeah, they believe all kinds of things. And what happens with and it is real. There is an echo chamber effect where you can go onto Twitter and say, I'm pretty sure that JFK is going to come back on a flying saucer, and you could find a dozen people to retweet you and agree with you. You could say the most absurd thing. I've tried it. And as long as you throw emojis, American flags, USA, hashtag MAGA, you get a pass. You just got to put out the right signals. So there's a community for the insane claims. This is nothing new anyway. People have always joined cults. Jessica Lynn says, how do we even know this? Fake AF. No, this is real. Yeah, don't drink the Kool-Aid. Put down the Q-pipe. The hopium, or the copium, spelled with a Q, is a never-ending trap. It's an addiction. In fact, a lot of prophecies work according to this, what they call the gambling or the gambler's fallacy, where you think it's going to come true. Like, think about how often the Q drops are recycled. They came up with something called deltas, which means if Q said something on, we'll say, August 31st, 2017, well, 3 years later, August 31st, 2020 was the, quote, 3-year delta. And anything in the news that connects to the Q drop from 3 years prior is considered confirmation that the prophet Q was predicting the future. This operates by the sharpshooter fallacy. There's such a huge body of content to draw from, you're going to have some hits. And as long as you ignore the misses and only highlight your hits, you can give the false appearance of being very accurate, and people fall for it all the time. The gambler's fallacy is when you think you've made such a strong case that your prophecy is about to come true, that when it doesn't come true, instead of backing away from it, you say, oh, it's the next one. It's going to be the next pull on the slot machine that's going to win. I've lost 1,000 times in a row, so it's more likely I'm going to win on the next pull. And that's the fallacy, the idea that a long sequence of losses means that a win is more likely or more probable. And as counterintuitive as it feels, it's not true. That it has the same probability, whether or not it had a long sequence of wins or losses. But there's this sense, this feeling that things will balance out. I think Carl Sagan described it as probability is clumpy. But the gambler fallacy is built in, has this built-in idea that every time you miss or lose, you're that much closer to a big win. So every time the prophecy doesn't come true, it's more likely to come true next year, and the next year, and the next year, and the next year. And it goes on and on. It's an addiction. Lack says, I know many people that are making financial decisions and future plans thinking Donald Trump is coming back to make America great again. Like they're buying his gold shoes and his NFTs and MAGA hats and flags, getting the number 47 tattooed on their necks. Huge mistake. You know, you're investing all your money into Trump merch and you're banking on Biden surviving the next 3 months. Because if anything happens to him, it goes to Kamala. She gets 47. Now that number is hers. Now all those hats belong to Kamala. Trump has to send his hat over to her because 47 is no longer his number. That MAGA rapper, Fellatio Blow, he's got 47 tattooed on his head. He's going to have to change that to an 8 if Trump wins, or a 9 if Trump loses and runs again in 2028. That would be a disaster. Oh, oh, really? You don't say? He says, imagine being in a retirement home talking about 50-year deltas. Yeah, that's where they're at. They're at that point where it's like, well, 8 years ago, Q said. Okay, so Q predicted this 8 years ago, and it's just something ridiculous. Like some of these, they call themselves date coders. They were like, well, RFK Jr. was 70 years, 7 months, and 7 days old when he got endorsed by Trump. And they're looking at this as a hugely significant thing. And they're reading a lot of significance into it. And it's kind of like how people would worship Princess Diana and other celebrities. Like they're basically obsessed with celebrities and treating them all like they're some kind of gods. And there's some kind of biblical significance to a guy that eats dead bears he finds on the side of the road, shaking Trump's hand after bad-mouthing Trump for the last few years. It's like, big deal. Both of his voters are going to vote for Trump now. Like, who cares? But the idea that because he was 70 years old and 7 months and 7 days, it means something. What does that number mean to you? Like, jackpot? What does 777 mean? I don't quite... See, that's where you can state unequivocally that they're using the sharpshooter fallacy. They're not stating the parameters first. Like, only these numbers are significant. No, they have a bunch of numbers. Or only these words are significant. Well, if they can't get it to line up, they just pull out a secondary calculator. But yes, the QAnon cult is using Kabbalistic numerology and connecting it to the news in order to make sense of their lives. Ryler says, anyone who supports Trump in any way at this point should be labeled a shill. Yeah, anti-pro. I'm not even pro-Harris. I'm voting for Harris to make a point. I'm doing this to demonstrate a point to Trutherville. And I'm going to proudly support her. And people will say, how can you vote for that monster? And I'm going to say, well, because voting doesn't mean anything. And I'm not part of the InfoWar, and I'm not deceived. And if you think that it's a problem that I'm voting for her, that I took a vote away from your guy, then you're deceived. So it's kind of a troll, and it's a statement, but I can make a bigger statement by openly endorsing her than by just not participating. I guess I'll have to organize something here. Maybe I'll put some yard signs up. Like the IPS endorses Kamala Harris. How many people would get mad? Jurassic Liar says, open the phones and I'll explain why it was important that he was 70 years, 7 months, and 7 days. Okay. Phones are open. I'm just saying this. The notion that his birth was somehow a factor in when that event was planned is preposterous. It's an impossible alignment. And so the people who are saying, oh, these numbers are significant, or that this is evidence of a divine presence writing our news. And I'm telling you that it can't work that way. That these alignments aren't being done by a higher power. That's not a legitimate alignment. That's something they retrofitted after the fact. It doesn't count. And we're getting into this area where they're making up their own code that they can prove anything right. And so they proved that on the 29th of this month that Trump was going to get shot. This was already, they talked about it. They said, if it doesn't happen, it could happen on the 30th. Well, it's been 2 days later. And none of these people with these calendars have been able to make the case again and again. So what I'm saying is that they're grasping at straws. And they can't make any real predictions. And what's worse, they think the news is real. They believe the news is real. We wouldn't have the divine hand of God writing the news stories if the news stories were fake. So the hypothesis that there's a higher power engineering these events and coordinating it operates under the presumption that these events are real. It wouldn't make sense that God is running psyops. Jessica Lynn says on the 29th, there was a guy who rushed the stage at a Trump rally. Yeah, I saw the guy getting out of hand, kind of cheering and yelling, but I don't think that qualifies as a significant event. I'm really kind of finding the whole premise. I mean, we can rule it out. The calendar date decoders have been consistently wrong this entire time. And they don't have a correct understanding of what predictive programming means. It's a disinformation campaign. Their whole objective is to keep you mystified. They want you thinking it's a simulation or we're in the end times. And if that's where you're at, that's fine. Like, I hope you have your space junk helmet. I hope you have your bunker ready because the world's going to end. Cool. Just make sure that you have an Amazon account so they can send stuff to your house. But that's, again, something I entirely reject. The same reason why I reject the model they've given us. They have every incentive to lie about history, every incentive to lie about the map, every incentive to lie about how much time is left. It's time and space control. Kevin Mooring says, Zach Hubbard blocked me. See, Zach Hubbard uses the Texas sharpshooter fallacy to predict sports, but he's not making any legitimate predictions. He's making it look like he's accurate. Riley says, if we don't vote Trump, Tim, the Chinese army will come across the borders and take us over. Whatever happened to the radical Islamists putting on sombreros and pretending to be Mexicans and taking over? That never happened. Now it's Chinese. You see how they just phase these things out? Messianic Charlatan says, Ralph Epperson told me Trump is going to restore Princess Diana on the throne when reelected. That's why he snubbed the Queen on camera. Yeah, the whole QAnon has this whole body of fan fiction where behind the scenes, the Pope has been deposed. They took all his gold. The Queen has been killed and they replaced her with a hologram. And Princess Diana is the mother of Baron Trump. So if you can imagine Donald Trump and Princess Diana, that's where Baron came from. So they've got this entire body of, like, I call it cults of personality or an imperial cult. It's erotomania, it's idol worship, but it's 100% a bizarre cult, and it's weirdly obsessed with royals and royalty, and the idea that Trump is serving the bloodline of Christ because JFK was the second coming, but he got shot. That's why JFK Jr. is looked at as this big hope, because he's the son of God. So he's basically the third coming of Christ. And Donald Trump is helping him by setting up the stage for his emergence. So we're basically waiting for JFK Jr. to save the world. And something else too. So Donald Trump sired Baron Trump with Princess Diana. You know who else had relations with Princess Diana? JFK Jr. So Donald Trump and JFK Jr. are very close friends, and they both have had relations with Princess Diana. And then what's more, JFK Jr. also slept with Ghislaine Maxwell. Imagine that. That's a crazy one to think about. That Ghislaine Maxwell had relations with JFK Jr., bragged about it. Very interesting connections there. And here he is joking about Monica Lewinsky as a 9-year-old, writing letters to Bill Clinton with some just twisted innuendo built into it. Now, as far as this new JFK Jr. guy, Edward X, with the impressive IMDb profile, I don't know if any of his movies need to be watched for predictive programming value, but I'm probably going to check out Mega Man. And we'll find out, is this JFK Jr.? Is this the third coming of Christ? If you're a QAnon person, and you're drinking the Kool-Aid, this is where you're placing your hope. This guy's going to save the tunnel children. And all the children in the Wayfair cabinets, on the shipping crates, on the cargo ships. Like, this guy's going to save us all. Soon, hopefully. But he has to wait for Trump to win. They would have saved the world in 2020, but Trump didn't win. He was going to drain the swamp his first term, but he didn't get around to it. So he was going to drain it his second term, but it didn't happen, so he's going to have to wait. Which doesn't make sense because he's still president, according to many. He's a commander-in-chief. So it's like, well, why are you waiting to drain the swamp? So I guess we have to wait 777 months and 7 days or something. I'll have to ask one of my decoders. Peter W. says, Elvis sleeps in my garage. Yeah, phones are open. And my point here is that there are a lot of people who are just making up their own prophecies all the time. And they're using a time-tested methodology, a trick, to make it look like they're accurate. And they don't take accountability for where they're wrong. And they're all operating under the premise that we're in the end times and that Trump is the savior. So I don't care what such people have to say in general, but I think they're noise. Hey, what's up, caller?
Hey, dude, listen, first of all, you know that I agree with you on whatever the hell that sharpshooter crap you always say. But what I'm saying is when it comes to these decoders who use the gematria calculator, and the problem is they use 1,000 different ciphers to make their point, which is ridiculous. You can't do that. Okay, that's one thing. And when it comes to the certain dates to certain dates, of course, it would make absolutely no, you know what I mean? If you don't have a source of what it means, then of course it's not going to make any sense. And those guys have no source. Okay, but if you want to know why it was relevant, the 70 or 7 months, 7 days, first of all, I'm pretty sure that they got that from my channel, because that's where I was the first one to show that. So that's weird that I don't know where you're getting that info from.
It's not weird. I think you're targeted. To be honest, I think a lot of these anonymous people, these so-called coders, and they're all connected with predicting sports and trying to get people to subscribe to their Patreon, and they all accuse each other of stealing each other's quote decodes. I think that this is an operation to drown out what you're talking about. They don't want us to get an edge on anything.
Well, can I just tell you why it's important?
Yeah, please.
That 70 years. Okay, now let me tell you again, it would not mean nothing just because it's the jackpot number, because that is what it would mean technically. And because, the 7 has to do with the number of God, and God always using the number 7. We're not even going to get into that. But the fact that it is the 70 years, 7 months, 7 days, the reason it's important is because when Trump became president, on the very day he was inaugurated, he was 70 years, 7 months, 7 days old. Just like RFK Jr. being 70 years old, 7 months, 7 days when he endorsed Trump. So there is a connection to the presidency there, okay? But the source is the fact that from the day that Trump was elected, the day Trump became president to the day he was endorsed by RFK Jr. is the same amount of days from Trump's birth to RFK Jr.'s birth. So that's why it connects, because it connected to the day that Trump became president when he was 70 years old, 7 months, 7 days, to the day RFK Jr. endorsed him, and RFK Jr. was 70 years, 7 months, 7 days. In between that period of time of the day that Trump became 70 years, 7 months, 7 days, and RFK Jr. being 70 years, 7 months, 7 days, it's the same amount of days in between their birth dates, their exact birth. You know what I mean? The birth, when they were actually born, both of them.
Okay. And for those who don't know, Trump was born on a blood moon on 6/14/46, which has a lot of fascinating connections. But yeah, when he got into office, he was 70, 7 months, 7 days. All kinds of strange 777s were connected to Trump. Inauguration day, he was 70 years, months, and days. I have a list of these things. Trump has a number of interesting number codes attached to him, as well as characters, like the number 88 and 58 is actually 58 is a huge one with Trump as well. But I'd like to point out that these decoders are totally misguided, and I happen to think that it might be a plot. I think it's a plot to drown out any sensible understanding of what we're seeing here by people who don't have a clue.
Well, I totally agree with you when it comes to these people using gematria for betting sports and all that other stuff, because you cannot predict stuff like that. It's very rare that these people get it right. Most of the time we get it wrong, actually, if you try to do it,
Well, let me bring this up, too, because Trump's connected with 9/11 in all kinds of ways. And 88, these numbers are all very significant. But 77, first of all, you have the Pentagon construction begins on 9/11, 1941. So 60 years before it begins construction. It's 77 feet tall, and Flight 77 is flying for 77 minutes when it hits the Pentagon. So there's all kinds of significance built into these things with the numbers. None of these things are accidental. I recently found out that the first tower, the North Tower went down at 10:28 a.m. Well, the date, 10/28, and the significance there. Another 9/11 connection to Trump, of course, is the 88 floors. Anyway, we got into this stuff, but I want to bring this one up. 10/28. that's the date that you've drawn attention to for the reason of Elvis getting the polio shot on that date on TV.
Yeah, and it's because Elvis is everything with Elvis has to do with the needle. You know what I mean? And when he took the needle on Bill Gates' first birthday, Bill Gates lives near the Seattle Space Needle. He was born there, in Seattle. And then Elvis was the first famous person to have anything to do with the Space Needle in Seattle when he made the movie. It happened at the World's Fair. That was the first famous person to have anything to do with the needle. But what's important is that the year that Elvis took the needle, you had a horse that almost won the Triple Crown. He won 2 out of the 3 races. The horse was called Needles. You know?
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah. And 2/3 is 666, right? You understand 66.6. And on the year Elvis died, you had Seattle Slew winning the Triple Crown. So that's why it aligns so perfectly with what they're about to do, you know, because it happened on 6/11 when Seattle Slew won the Triple Crown the year Elvis died. You know?
Triple Crown, Crown Corona. Fascinating connections here. Something else too. The idea of Starman going into space, which I was talking about earlier. It's a David Bowie effigy who has the Elvis birthday, and the Black Star connects to Elvis in many ways. The Hollywood Star. There's a song called Black Star. But the idea of Starman going into space through a rocket is like a space needle. And I've made this correlation between outer space and inner space, as in the space between your ears. So what they're doing is by creating this false worldview based around their outer space mythology, they've taken control of our inner space. But similarly, just as the outer space and inner space have been connected, as in our minds, they've made the connection between low Earth orbit and the space junk problem and our circulation and the internal junk, the virus, etc. So the reason it's significant is that Elvis taking the needle represents, like the space needle represents something going to space. The needle's going into your inner space. Again, it's all just as above, so below on a microcosmic level. So it's all about the purity of mind, pure of mind viruses. That's ultimately what it's suggesting here, but this is a significant symbol in the Elvis movie, where at the very beginning they show this space needle-like structure, and then they show him passed out on the ground. They bring out a needle, and they inject him with something, and then he wakes up. So he's like dead on the ground, and then he resurrects. So there's been this reoccurring theme here, correlating the rockets, like the boosters, outer space, and the inner space with a needle.
Yeah, and besides all the David Bowie connections to all of this, you know, the fact that David Bowie being born on Elvis's birthday, and the Black Star connection, the Lazarus. But let me just tell you this: why? Because you know Trump is the one who brought out the needle, the injection, right? Explain, you know, when you think about it, because it's called the Crown 19, right? So the point I'm trying to make is why did they wait? Why was Trump the one who gave Elvis the Presidential Medal of Freedom Award? That's what you have to ask yourself. All these presidents before could have easily been the one to give out to Elvis. Because, you know, when Elvis was super famous, you would think somebody would have already gave it out to him, you know, with all the, you know, after he had died, you know, soon after. But they didn't. They waited for Trump to do it. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I remember that. And at the time, I was thinking how interesting it is that Trump is 45. He's got that famous shot glass with a bullet in it, but that a Colt 45 was given to President Nixon by Elvis. So I remember at the time talking about this strange connection with Elvis and Trump and the White House thing and getting that medal. These two characters are inseparable, which is pointed out too that the guy who wrote Back to the Future and made Biff Tannen based on Donald Trump. If you look at Biff Tannen, it looks like a cross between Elvis and Trump. It's like Trump with sideburns.
Yeah, the one when he got a little bit older, Biff Tannen, like when he was owning the hotels and casinos.
Yes.
It was a mixture of Elvis and Trump. Yeah.
I think it's called Pleasure Paradise. And there was some kind of scene where Trump actually was out at Paradise after the fires, and he had kind of seemed to have inadvertently alluded to this. But yes, Biff Tannen's Pleasure Paradise, definitely Trump. And I want to point out, because somebody said, but Garrow's the only one predicting the future, right? No, it's not the same thing. Because what we're doing here even is we're not predicting the future in the sense that these people are randomly pretending to have some kind of psychic insight. But what I'm really doing here, what we've been doing, is analyzing their obvious agendas. Like, we're accurate for the most part about what's happening here. And the idea that everything is prepared in advance, like none of this stuff is accidental. There's no coincidences on the world stage. And I've noticed that you tend to pick up a lot more predictive programming in the regular news, whereas I seem to be like focused on movies, but it's equally present in both.
Yeah, absolutely. And just real quick, with the Trump during 9/11, because I told you everything's about Satan. Satan equals 55 if you just add up the letters, in simple gematria. S being 19, A being 1, T being 20, A being 1, and N being 14. You get 55. The point I'm trying to make is that you get 55. The reason I'm bringing that up is because Trump during 9/11 was 55 years old, and so was all three presidents born in 1946, which is Bush, Clinton, and Trump, which is the TCB, which is the Elvis motto, TCB. Those three: Trump, Clinton, Bush.
Right. Trump was 55 when 9/11 happened. Interesting. And there's no.
They were all 55.
They were all 55. That's crazy, actually. Now that I think about it.
Yeah, but wait. If you add up three times 55, you get 165. Trump was born on the 165th day of the year. But go ahead.
Oh, that's interesting. 165th day of the year. Now, see this stuff.
165.
Now, all of this, the dates and all this stuff makes a lot of sense, especially when you look. It makes sense when you understand and note how much significance they place on the calendar year and the dates according to the position of the sun and their occult division of the year into the, you have the quarters and then you have the celebrations in between these points. But there's like 8 major key points on the pagan calendar. But these dates are highly significant to this astrotheological cult. And it's interesting that Trump is associated with Vegas, casinos, Biff Tannen, his casino, because casinos contain a lot of the same symbolism. I was talking about the playing cards. People know tarot cards are this occult tool, but playing cards are derived from that, and the 4 suits are the same. And the numbers on the cards add to 365 because it's the sun. 4 seasons, 4 suits. The roulette, you add all the numbers, adds to 666, another major sun number. But just pointing out here that this is just basic occultism in everybody's face that all points to some kind of obsession with dates and the sun and the timing, precise timing. 9/11 happened, it kicks off at 8:46 a.m., the instant that Mercury's rising. And that number 846 has great significance in a number of their psyops I'm not going to get into now, but it just shows you that these are astrologically timed events.
Yeah, and the connection with what I was talking about with Satan equaling 55. So Trump was 55 when all 3 presidents, but Trump especially was 55 because Trump lives in New York. That's what makes him special than the other 2. You know what I mean? Because he was right next to the towers when it went down, right? And so him being 55 when the towers went down, which is Satan. Then you have Obama being president when Trump gets elected and became president. Obama was 55. Okay, because Trump's going to get his head wound on Obama's birthday, which is 8/4, and 8/4 is when Trump gets his head wound. So it connects the fact that he became president and got elected while Obama was 55 years old, because someone had to connect to that, because it's like a spider web of connections that they have to have. Like you said, I'm not saying it's a simulation. I'm saying that they have some kind of numerical magic that they're doing.
It's witchcraft.
Okay, whatever the hell they're doing.
Yeah, 100%. And I remember Trump on 9/11. He's like, now I have the tallest building. hilarious statement. But someone posted here, Synchromorpheus, that Trump had accidentally called the town of Paradise Pleasure. That's the connection. And of course, the pleasure paradise, but it was after that place called Paradise had burned. But yeah, no, Trump is hardwired into everything.
Well, speaking of Paradise, Elvis, that international hotel that we always talk about that has that Space Needle connection, that was on Paradise Road. 3000 Paradise Road was the address, because I think it's in Paradise, the area it's called. That Vegas area, it's called Paradise. I'm not sure. You got to check that one, but I'm pretty sure I'm correct.
I'll look. And the International Hotel is extremely significant, I think, for a few reasons in that Elvis movie. And I think it has a great deal of foreshadowing for what's to come. I have to rewatch the movie, but there seem to be some clues thrown in there about that International Hotel, and I think they were connecting it to the International Space Station. Kind of a side note, but these movies are all just propaganda dumps, and they just unload all kinds of content into the subconscious minds. And that's why it's significant. When you talk about the subject of magic, which is what we're talking about when we're looking at these alignments, a lot of it is about the symbols. And one of the things you have in all these rituals are visual depictions of the gods. And syncretism is when you put an older god or any kind of religious artifact in a new context by dressing it up as somebody new. So, for example, they merge these things. And I think that you've made the case pretty strongly that Elvis would represent the fallen angel. I've suggested that Barbie is an idol representing the Whore of Babylon. But this is what they're doing with movies and news and all these world stage characters. It's all highly planned, and these ones that are characters have more significance than people would think. They're just not random on the world stage if they're given any kind of spotlight, like Robert De Niro out there ranting outside of the Trump trial. That wasn't just some random Trump deranged lefty. That was a huge clue that presented many examples of that as attached to the Trump shooting before it happened.
Yeah, it's like, you know what happened while you were talking? I forgot what I was going to say because I had something I was going to say, but I completely forgot.
Listen to this. Trump Tower opened on the 45th day of the year. Trump became the 45th president. Trump Plaza opens with 614 rooms. And then his birthday is 614. That's interesting.
And 6 times 14. And 6 times 14 equals 84. And
I think most people know that Devil's Advocate made use of Trump's penthouse. So you have the devil in that one. And isn't it true that one of Trump's towers is like 666 feet or something? Let me see if I can find it. There's some kind of weird number. There's numbers all over his stuff here, but there's something in there. I got to find it.
I think it's 66 floors. But it's actually 58, but because he takes up the whole top at 66. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, here we go.
I'm not sure.
Okay, so Trump Tower, 664 feet. And I think, it's 58 stories, 202 meters. But I think somebody had pointed out something about where Trump's standing. I don't know. I got to look into this. But all very interesting, and it has this interesting kind of like cube built into the front face of the building. All these buildings, all this architecture has occult significance. All of it's very much tied into this bigger story. Then you have the Apollo stuff in Trump's penthouse, which I think Apollo connects to Apollyon. And Apollyon is Abaddon, or Abaddon, from Revelation 9:11.
Yeah, like, it's amazing how all the connections with the fact that that the 611 happened the same year. What's his name? Stupid Timothy McVeigh being executed. It tells you, because it has to do with the bombing, the stupid Timothy McVeigh. So it's telling you that there's a connection there. The fact that 6/11 he got executed the same year 9/11 happened. They're just they're warning you right there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Seattle and the All-Star game that year was in Seattle. If you want to look that up, say where was the 2001 baseball All-Star game?
Now, one thing here I want to make clear for people is the reason why this isn't prophecy in the sense that a lot of these disinfo agents seem to think is that they are writing our history in advance. Like, this is all pre-scripted. Okay, 2001 Major Leagues All-Star Game. Let's see if I can find that information. Okay, I think I found it. And they encode all kinds of messaging into the sports as well. I mean, I talk about Zachary Hubbard using a lot of what appears to be fallacious reasoning, but he does pick out some of the stories, like the Jets versus the Patriots. I mean, New York, Jets, Patriots. It's pretty funny stuff. Okay, Seattle Mariners All-Star Game, MLB. I think I found it. But anyway, yes.
No, well, the reason I'm bringing that up, who did the Yankees win the Baseball World Series that year after, or who won the? Like,
it says here.
I'm trying to think.
I'm getting all kinds of crazy AI responses that are just not reliable. It's just ridiculous. They've really screwed this up.
Yeah, they did. Well, anyway, I don't know, but the reason I'm bringing that up is because Seattle. The fact that it was the reason I'm bringing that up because Elvis died in '77. The Seattle Mariners baseball team started in '77, the year Seattle Slew died. I mean, Seattle Slew won the Triple Crown on 6/11. But here's the catch: if you look up and say, what did the white settlers call Seattle before it was Seattle?
Oh yeah, they called it Manhattan.
No.
No. It was.
You're close.
Hold on, let me find it.
You're close. You're very close.
Okay, the first name. Okay, there's a couple things here. Why don't you fill me in? Because I found something else.
Oh yeah, just say, did the white settlers call Seattle New York?
Okay, they did. That's what it was. White settlers in 1851. Yeah, New York. Fascinating.
Yeah.
So
basically,
there's a connection with New York and Seattle, and this is very consistent in the predictive programming that Seattle's going to be the ground zero for the next 9/11. I was saying that a few days before 3/11, which was a ground zero, which is why I say that was a 9/11 event. But there was this movie, a TV show called DMZ, had 4 episodes. And I think this is more predictive programming for Kamala. So here you have DMZ, and here's why it's significant. It's about a civil war in America. Here she is with the one eye, and she's like the leader. But it takes place in Manhattan. So I was like, that's kind of interesting, because like the Manhattan Project, Manhattan seems to play, here it is, Demilitarized Zone of Manhattan. So this is just another movie that points to Civil War, but it has Kamala standing.
Oh, did you see the Key and Peele episode? I don't know if you know who that is. They're comedy guys. Let me tell you what the title is.
It's Jordan Peele, right? And Jordan Peele is a Key and Peele. Yes, I haven't watched too much of it, but I've seen one episode, I think.
Yeah, type it in: CIA interrogation, Key and Peele, and go to play it from the 50-second mark.
Okay.
50 seconds in.
Okay. And just for reference, Jordan Peele directed Nope. And Nope has the killer chimp. He produced Monkey Man. So we were talking about him. And then it's also the case that he was inspired to do Nope based on the George Floyd event. And one more thing, he likely directed the death of Jordan Neely at the hands of Daniel Penny. But anyway, here's Jordan Peele, major metascriptor, CIA interrogation. I'm going to play it at the 50-second mark.
50-second mark, yeah, start there.
It's a nice try, really is. But it's bull, Rashid. Come on. Is that the best you got? Now, come on. I'm listening. Just tell me. Tell me about this imminent attack.
What? What attack? I don't know what
I don't know.
Okay, so imminent attack. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know. You spoke of an imminent attack. Continuing.
No. June 11th, Rashid.
Oh, June 11th. What the hell? You spoke of an imminent attack. His dog bit him. If you do not train them, there'll be another. This is interesting. 6/11. Play that again.
I don't know.
June 11th, Rashid. You spoke of an imminent attack.
Oh, yes. No, listen, that was my friend. Listen, his dog.
His dog bit him. That's probably a clue as well. The dog is a very key symbol, and we talk about it sometimes, but that's interesting. What do you make of it? Jordan Peele, of all people.
Yeah, and well, there's other connections with the name and everything. I'm not going to get into that, but can I just tell you this about the Washington thing? Well, first of all, you made great points about Jordan Peele and all that other stuff. I don't know any of that stuff. You're the one doing all the, what do you call that, metascripting? What do you call it?
Yeah, that's what
I don't even know what you call it.
That's what I call it. Because it's obviously
that's a great name. Yeah,
but,
that's a great name.
But yeah, Jordan Peele is hugely significant in the PSYOP entertainment complex.
But let me just tell you this about the fact that Washington is the Apple state is what's important, because they're calling New York the Big Apple, right? So the fact that Washington is the Apple state is another reason why the next attack would be having a connection with the Apple, because this is going to be the real Apple attack. You know what I mean? Because the first one was just, it was a targeted more, condensed, and this one is the real one. This is the one where I'm telling you, man, this is not going to be no joke, this one. This is going to change the world. That's why they're ready to, this is going to be the real one, man. I'm telling you.
I happen to think that that's where everything is leading. And last year, Leave the World Behind came out. Obama's connected to the movie because he produced it. It has JFK assassination hints, blackouts, Boeing, but the blackout theme, the EMP, that's been very consistent. And I think that the EMP has been strongly connected even with 11/3. But what you're pointing out here is the 6/11 thing. Trump was shot at 6/11. So June 11th, 6/11, this is obviously a huge key, but I've been making the point that since it's the inverted 9/11, it represents the internal threat instead of the external. And again, Timothy McVeigh assassinated or executed that date. And you'll notice the 6/11 is a meme throughout the right wing. They always talk about 6/11 Ephesians, armor of God, or Tim 6/11 in Sound of Freedom, big Q code. So 6/11 is a big code with all of the right-wing domestic violent extremists. And if Timothy McVeigh was their martyr, and Timothy McVeigh was motivated by the Turner Diaries, which was written by a guy born on 9/11, 1933.
Yeah, and you remember earlier when I was mentioning that that all three presidents were 55, and 3 times 55 is 165, and Trump is born on the 165th day of the year?
Yes.
Okay, if you do 6 times 11, which is 66, and 9 times 11, which is 99, it's 165.
There's a certain harmony to all of it, like in the coding. Yeah, so and then like the Batman movie, you have the equivalent of domestic extremists motivated by the equivalent of Q, and they blow up a dam and flood the election. And at that time, the Republicans were saying, flood the polls. But you see it happen on the Batman movie, and it happens on 11/6. So 11/6, 6/11, and it's consistently associated with the domestic violent extremist attacks. And when Trump was on trial on 4/19, and that guy set himself on fire outside, that was the anniversary of Waco. Waco was burned, and Timothy McVeigh was motivated by Waco, so he did his terror attack on 4/19. So you have all these deep connections, and Trump kicked off his 2024 campaign in Waco the day after Netflix released Waco, American Apocalypse. It's just unbelievable.
Can I just say one more thing about that 6699? Because 6 times 11 is 66, 9 times 11 is 99. So what happened first? 9/11, right?
Yes.
Okay, so 9 times 11 is 99. The next one is 6/11. 6 times 11 is 66. So 9966, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure we understand each other. 9966. From the day Elvis was born to the exact day the Seattle Space Needle was opened on 4/21/62 was the date. 4/21/62 from Elvis's exact birth date, the exact day he was born. It's 9,966 days. 9966.
Very interesting. This is where I can see it looks like astrological planning, astrologically timed. 9/11 is the New Year's Day on the Coptic calendar. We've mentioned that before, but there's a certain harmony to all of it, and I look at McVeigh as like an inverted version of OBL. And McVeigh was 33 when he was executed on a place that had 33 acres, P.O. Box 33. He had a 33-year-old classical music composer playing music while he was electrocuted. It's insane. But then 3 months later, Muhammad Atta is 33, lead hijacker. And again, Muhammad, as you pointed out, attacks, ATTA, attacks. And then you mentioned that Seattle is the C attack. So there's a kind of a harmony between these two things too.
Yeah, before I end it, let me finish with that. Let me finish with the ATA stuff.
Yeah,
so,
please.
The ATA, the ATTA in ATA, and then you which in his name, the guy who supposedly was the first pilot, 9/11 attacks, they were calling it, attacks as the ATTA, and then, what's the other one? Oh my goodness. Manhattan has the ATTA, the 4 letters is straight across, the Manhattan has the ATTA, right?
Right.
Okay, so you have the Manhattan ATTA, ATA, the pilot ATTA, the attacks having the ATTA, and then he hits the plane that hit it, the first plane was American Airlines, which has AA, and he hit the Twin Tower, which is the TT. So you have the AA and the TT. The American Airlines hits the TT, the Twin Towers. You see that?
Yes. Yeah. That's
okay. And
go on. That's
right. And so what is the last piece, which is Seattle? Seattle has the ATT, but it's missing the A because it needs the ATTA. Where's the A? It's the Space Needle. The Space Needle is the A. Go look at it. It looks just like an A.
Let me see that. I know you've pointed this out before. Okay. Now, this is interesting, too, because there's this, and it does look like an A. When you're looking up at it, like the letter A.
Yep.
Okay, now, there's this thing. It's this duck and cover drill, and there's a duck and cover turtle. The duck and cover turtle from this 1952 film, and it's like this little song called Bert the Turtle. Anyway, there's some interesting symbolism in Terminator 2, where it has a sea turtle on a playground when the nuke hits. And so the sea turtle and the duck and cover turtle has this kind of significance here. And so I was looking at the way that they do these letters, like you're pointing out, like it's like sigil magic in a way. But I was picking up some stuff that was kind of encoding Seattle with sea turtle, and it was connected with Terminator 2. I'll see if I can pull it all together. But I was looking at this turtle and the sea turtle concept as possibly symbolizing the sea attack and the hunt for Red October, the submarine attack. And that's one of the things that was intimated. Or Godzilla, beast from the sea. Godzilla was designed to be a metaphor for the nuke. But anyway, there's been a long standing body of predictive programming with Seattle that I'm just kind of pointing out here. And it's highly significant, too, that James Cameron did Terminator 2 because he also did Titanic, which has great significance. The sinking of the Titanic to 9/11. On 9/11, he was at the site of the sunken Titanic. So I think there's some T stuff. Titanic, 2 T's, Twin Towers.
Yeah, and the 2 T's is the Antichrist. That's what that means. Because Jesus was crucified on the cross. So if you have a second cross, That means that's the Antichrist, the double cross.
Okay, I'm glad you brought this up because I mentioned how Terminator 2, the T2, makes the symbol of Saturn, like the T2, and the double cross is this reoccurring theme, and two T's. Well, Tom Cruise, his name Thomas means twin, so you got the twin cross, and he just did the rappelling in Paris 42 feet. So it's this reoccurring theme here. The Paris Olympics opened with all kinds of nuke stuff. You had a band named Godzilla, or Gojira, which means Godzilla. You had the Planet of the Apes reference to the broken down Statue of Liberty, which has the nuke in it in the movie. So then you have Tom Cruise at the end. But I just started watching this Mission Impossible, and it begins where Tom Cruise's character has to find these two keys, and each one is a cross. So it's a double cross. So the double cross stuff is all over Tom Cruise, just pointing it out that, yeah, that's a reoccurring theme with all this stuff.
And do you know what's the biggest, the two biggest attacks on American soil? Do you know what they are?
Two biggest attacks on American soil would be 9/11 and... Would you count Pearl Harbor or no?
That's it. That's the biggest two. Pearl Harbor and 9/11, right?
So
and
yes.
And I told you that everything 6 times 11 is 66, and from Elvis's birthday to the day the Twin Towers fell is 66 years. Okay, but forget about that. The point I was trying to bring up was the other connection, which is Pearl Harbor, which is a sea attack. It was water, right? And I've explained to everybody that Elvis equals water, Elvis equals reset, but in gematria. But what's important is that it's the sea attack and Pearl Harbor. How many days and months from Elvis's exact birth, to the day Pearl Harbor happened is exactly 6 years, 11 months.
6/11.
Exactly.
Okay, that's fascinating. Yeah. And Pearl Harbor was on 12/7, 127. Then you have Twin Tower 1, Twin Tower 2, and Building 7.
That's exactly right, and that's exactly what you're saying.
And before,
because it's all connected.
Yeah, and right before 9/11, the movie Pearl Harbor came out, and then when 9/11 happened.
Hello.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah. So you're right. The 127.
I can't hear nothing.
Okay, I can hear you just fine. We'll give it just a moment here.
We got disconnected.
Okay, I think there must be something with our sounds. I'll just put a note in chat for him. It says there's a...
I got disconnected.
Okay, unfortunately, great call. I'll just put a note here. Google Voice had a gremlin. It dropped his audio. It said something with a mic input. Civil War lasted 3 years, 11 months. Didn't know that. Gematria 101. Now, the movie Pearl Harbor comes out. They said that the sinking of the Twin Towers, or the fall of the Twin Towers, it was compared to the Titanic. I don't know. I mean, I found some articles on this. But then also, 9/11 was called that generation's Pearl Harbor. And to make sure they knew about the Pearl Harbor, they had to release that movie. And when September 11th happened, when the attacks happened, James Cameron was 13,000 feet underwater, filming Ghosts in the Abyss. That's why he's so significant in all of this. That, yeah, he was exploring the wreckage of the Titanic. And his movie has some very interesting, significant relationship to the sinking of the Twin Towers. If you look at the Titanic splitting in two. But he was in the Challenger, the Deep Sea Challenger on 9/11. So connected all together here. Revelation 9/11, the Challenger, the destroyer in the abyss. He's there in the abyss at the wrecked Titanic. So what we're seeing here is if you look at the Titanic as a metaphor for the West, same with the Twin Towers. You're looking at, in James Cameron being there, the Revelation 9/11, the angel looking over the bottomless pit. And I would argue here that this is all just kind of a buildup. The iceberg hitting the Titanic, the planes, radical Islam hitting the Twin Towers, that this is all just metaphor. But specifically here, I think what we're seeing is the preparation for the West sinking and the big one that hits it, which will be the nuke. Oppenheimer. We're going to get Oppenheimered. And speaking of the 611 code, in the movie, Oppenheimer's wearing the badge with the K6, 11.6, IMAX film, 11 miles long, 600 pounds. James Cameron is on the Titanic submersible as 9/11 unfolded. Also, his movie Titanic had predicted programming for 9/11. Ghosts in the Abyss. And there are many more connections here, but we're just talking about the significance of the Titanic splitting in two and sinking on 9/11, James Cameron being there. James Cameron is also significantly, I think, involved in the LA riots. And this is only recently revealed that the footage that sparked the LA riots was from a guy named Holiday who was filming James Cameron filming Terminator 2. Terminator 2 has an evil cop as a villain. So he brings out this portrayal of the police officers now as the bad guys. So here you have James Cameron filming the evil cop doing evil things, and this guy's filming James Cameron filming that stuff as a bystander. Then he's walking through LA, and he sees evil cops beating up Rodney King. Now, interestingly, 9/11, we know the significance, but 119 is tied into the fall of the Tower of Babel, the Tower of Babylon, Genesis 11:9. So we've correlated the fall of the Titanic, sinking of the Titanic, sinking of the Twin Towers, and even the ISS. I've been saying the ISS. It all represents the Tower of Babel and how it's going to fall. So 119 has that significance to it. Well, if you look at the Rodney King beating, which now we've connected it to James Cameron, that the same footage had this Rodney King beating had the Terminator 2 on it. The Rodney King beating took place over the course of 1 minute and 19 seconds. And he was hit 33 times. And of course, this is the official story. You can read it for yourself, but his name is King, which has some great significance to this as well. Okay, here it is. Plumbing salesman and amateur videographer George Holliday's videotape of the beating is what was used. Now, one other thing, this George Holliday looks like a slightly fatter version of James Cameron in some shots, but I don't know. I don't think it's just kind of a interesting coincidence here, I guess. But let me see if I can pull up the timing of the beating. Here it is. It says here, numerous baton strikes on King, resulting in some 33 blows hitting him. Power strokes. But then also the 1 minute and 19 seconds. So this is all highly significant. And what are we seeing here? Well, part of it is the fall of America as Babylon falling. And intrinsic to this is the idea of the black versus white, this race war narrative. Derek Chauvin kneeling on George Floyd for 8:46. 9/11 starts off when the first plane hits at 8:46 as Mercury's rising. So that 8:46 thing has some significance tying these events together. It was a 9/11ing of America when Derek Chauvin kneels on Floyd. And Floyd was being apprehended because of what? A $20 bill. A $20 bill has some occult significance on the back. Looks like the Twin Towers. It's also a fake bill, so it's a twin or a counterfeit. And I think the word 20 actually means twin tens. Okay, here it is. During the 1 minute and 19 seconds, King is beaten. So 119. Tower of Babel, again, Genesis 119. And this is why it's also significant that Donnie Darko was released on 119. And the movie ISS released on 1/19. You could have predicted that. Okay, let me catch up on comments. We had a caller, Garrow. Unfortunately, the call got dropped. The Mech says Handsome Truth was banned on X again. Yeah, he's a operative. Handsome Truth is some kind of a Poe. Very questionable. Alex Stein level plant. Very questionable character. Yes, Lean Dion says, caution, 9/11 was written on the underpass chase scene in Terminator 2. And then you had the explosion, and it looked like two explosions because the underpass has that pillar in the middle. And someone took a picture of that spot, and it's not 9 feet 11 inches. Like, that was added onto there. Plus the obvious significance of John Connor, the Savior, JC, the Terminator. I would even say that's a reference to the Terminator line. The Terminator line is where the sun, and we talk about like the sun god dies at sunset. So it's all tied into this myth. But the Terminator line is where the day and night are divided. So you have the death of the sun associated with the Terminator. So the Terminator goes back to kill JC, John Connor, Jesus Christ, Savior. Okay, let's continue here. Caller had brought up Jordan Peele in one of his, this is like a comedy show where he brings up June 11th. Very interesting connection there. Because Jordan Peele is specifically connected to this predictive programming for the rage virus. We're talking about the right-wing rage virus, Disease X, the reason for the quarantining of the internet, so that it would make a lot of sense. Because again, Jordan Peele was inspired to do Nope based off the George Floyd killing. Nope had the killer ape. He recently did Monkey Man about a killer ape or guy in an ape costume, but it was released on 3/11, so that connects to the virus. So we're talking about the mind virus. So Jordan Peele is very much connected with this entire area here. So we're seeing him bringing up 6/11. Now, there's a movie that just came out called City of Dreams. Now, I think this is something I might have to watch. Jesus is a young Mexican farmer who travels to LA for soccer camp, but then he's been sold to a sweatshop. Now, for some reason, City of Dreams is being talked about by certain right-wing influencers, which makes me kind of question like what's going on here. And Jack Postabek says, the same thing happened with Sound of Freedom. Sound of Freedom was last year's big QAnon movie about child trafficking. Tim Ballard, Tim 611 is all over it. But they're saying that, this guy says, I work at AMC. Our managers are telling us to tell people that City of Dreams is full when it's not. I need to keep this job, and I want to talk about this, so I hope you can use your platform to share this message. So you have these influencers sharing this message that the movie City of Dreams is being suppressed. They said the same thing with Sound of Freedom. And what I suspect here is that this is some kind of propaganda film, and this is how they're marketing it. Because I went and I saw Sound of Freedom, and the theater was mostly empty. But the company that produced it, it's this religious company, Mormon company called Angel, they have it set up on their website so you can buy tickets for people, like as an angel. Just, buy 10 tickets. So now someone goes to the site, and there might be some free tickets available for them. But I think this is a way of artificially inflating the numbers of people. So it looks like the movie's a big hit, but the media is trying to bury it. When Sound of Freedom came out, they said, hey, it's doing better than the new Indiana Jones, but the media is suppressing it. And the truth of it is, no, these grifters are buying out the tickets. That's why these theaters are likely empty. because I saw it myself. It's like they're buying these tickets to inflate it the same way that they do it with books. Like Donald Trump Jr. put out a book that nobody read. I really don't even think he read it. It's probably ghostwritten. Like, who would actually read that? But it was a bestseller for a little while. But then it got pulled off the bestseller list. And it got pulled off not because it was being censored, but because somebody was buying warehouses full of that book to spike the numbers. So they're gaming the system is what I'm saying. So I happen to think that City of Dreams, and I haven't seen it yet, it's probably some kind of right-wing movie, and they're probably trying to hype it up. Like someone here says, this is Sweet Pea on Twitter, they turned off the air conditioners in theaters that were playing Sound of Freedom. No, they didn't. There were people claiming that there were nanobots being put into the drinks if you went to go see Sound of Freedom. So it looks to me like another psyop. I'll look into it, but it looks like it's being promoted by a bunch of right-wing grifters, the griftosphere. Pretend to get censored, pretend to get swatted, pretend to be a victim, and you can get support in these groups. Ryler says, New York Times bestsellers are fake. Exactly. The Mex says they say Jackson on the $20 bill looks like Epstein. That is true. And if you flip it upside down and fold it, it looks like he's got a mask on. But what's also interesting is that you can draw a like here it is, the connection here, the resemblance. It's there. But I think you can also draw a headband on it and it'll look like Rambo. See if we can find that. Yeah, see, so I would suggest that maybe it doesn't look like Epstein, unless you can say that Epstein looks like Sylvester Stallone. And yeah, but no way, no way. I'm leaning towards Rambo. Synchromorphia says Jordan Peele's production company is called Monkey Paw Productions. Obviously, the monkey is a hugely significant character in all of this. Yep, good call, Flozik. 8 cops shot Walker. Is Jayland Walker was shot 46 times by 8 cops, 846. 846 is the time that Mercury was rising on 9/11. And there's a movie called, now check this out, there's a movie called Mercury Rising with Bruce Willis and the child actor from, here it is, Pet Sematary. Mercury Rising. So Mercury Rising comes out in 1998, and it's about this autistic child who's decoding stuff, and he's able to decode so many things that he's considered to be some kind of a threat to national security. So Mercury Rising, 1998. Bruce Willis. So here's the connection. When 9/11, 2001, the terror attacks kick off at 8:46 a.m., Mercury was rising. So then we have this movie called Mercury Rising. And the main character, his name is Miko Hughes. His father died on 9/11 when the first plane hit. So presumably at 8:46 a.m. So he was in Mercury Rising, Apollo 13, and Pet Sematary. But anyway, yeah, his father died on 9/11, 2001, and he's in a movie where he's this code breaker. Kind of a interesting connection, if you believe it, which I actually don't. Okay, I think we've covered a lot of ground. Excellent call by Jurassic Liars. Not sure why we got that error message here. We talked about this Trump shirt-wearing girl who had her ear bloodied by her attackers. Totally fake, in my opinion. Another staged ear wound. She outdid Trump in blood. We talked about Tucker Carlson. He's afraid of illegal aliens, but now his xenophobia has extended to ET. He's afraid of aliens because they're demons. So if you're on the right wing, the current thing is be afraid of aliens. They made a deal with the government. Then we found out what JFK Jr. has been doing since 1999, since he faked his death. He's been making bad horror movies. Okay, we covered DMZ, another predictive programming movie for Harris. Again, that's why I don't necessarily think Trump has to win for this whole thing to work, but I think we've been sufficiently programmed to accept as inevitable President Harris. Like, I think we're already there. The only question is it going to be some kind of a event with Biden first? Will she be 47 or 48? Okay, so City of Dreams, contrived drama about human trafficking. Okay, so this is another Sound of Freedom. Not surprising. Last year, Sound of Freedom made a splash at the box office by appealing to conspiracy theorists and religious groups, convincing audiences, remember this? That by watching the movie, it was morally righteous. That, like, oh, you didn't watch Sound of Freedom? Don't you care about trafficked children? Like, they made it sound like by watching the movie, they were saving children. The QAnoners were just virtue signaling hardcore about this. Then you find out that Tim Ballard is a human trafficker and a groomer, and he was going undercover, and he had women going undercover with him, but he insisted that they pretend to be his wife, and according to the reports, yeah, he was basically taking advantage of people. So Tim Ballard is a human trafficker. I mean, it's just totally ironic. But yeah, this is interactive guerrilla marketing. You're going to see a bunch of noners and Q-types walking out of theaters making claims like, oh, they put nanobots in our drinks and they shut off the air conditioning. And people will believe it. And they'll go buy tickets from the website for other people to see it. Oh, yeah. Buy tickets for other people, and then it makes it look like more people have seen it than not. Such a scam. I think we have some great information here. I have a lot more to go over, but we're going to be live tomorrow, so we'll catch up on all of this. There's just quite a lot happening right now. The blocking of X is, again, the disease X quarantine that we've been talking about. X began to go dark. Like, isn't this exactly what I said was going to happen? Just by reading their script, I said, mind viruses will be blamed for the shutdown of the internet. X went dark across Brazil today as their Supreme Court blocked the social network because Musk refuses to comply with court orders. So X getting blocked. This is the quarantine. Joining other countries around the world. So who else is doing this? So what I had said when X became X is that this is going to be the vector for the mind virus disease X that they're going to use as a justification for blacking out the internet until they can get rid of the mind viruses, all the mind junk. And it's happening. Okay, it says here, permanent ban. Some nations have temporarily suspended access. So it's been done before, here and there. Beijing did it once in 2010. But we'll see what happens with this. And it says some may use a VPN. We'll continue to follow this, but apparently there's an $8,900 per day fine if you're connected to X using a VPN. So what we're seeing here is quarantining for mind viruses. Ollie Goering says no one is saving the children. It's more like they're saving fake children or pretending to. There were never any children in the tunnels being saved by the white hats. It was all in their head. It's literally mind war. It's all fan fiction. but it's happening in their minds. It's between their ears. Like, this is world view warfare. I mean, it's incredible. Everybody is plugged into it. You're by default part of the programmed, and even if you're one of the programmers, it's likely that you're programmed most of the way. The only deprogrammed are those of us who are skeptical about it. From the we're actually not we're not actually just knee-jerk rejecting everything. We do have standards of evidence here. But as a rule, we're on the correct side of the screen. We're socially distanced from it, whereas you're expected to have your nose against the screen and not include anything in the periphery in your worldview, but just to treat the screen as almost like another sensory apparatus, that it should inform you more than your own eyes. You're going to believe what's on the screen or your lying eyes. It's just classic gaslighting. All right, this is Symbia, Auto Hoaxology. I'll place a link below. I'm going to get back to editing Insider, and at some point tomorrow, I'll have it released. Thanks for all the comments. See you all then.
I don't believe in chemtrails, I don't live in Truthville. Just because you saw it on the screen doesn't make it real. I don't take the red pill, I don't take the blue pill. I just choose to follow my dreams, auto hoax and chill. I stepped off the world stage and I've moved away from all the fake outrage and the hearsay. And I don't give the time of day to lose a naysay, because they got a bad case of the mind day. I stepped away from the game entirely, I won't be caught up in their lame dichotomy. I stepped away from the cage entirely, I'm free today and my mind's been set by reading out of hoaxology, out of the control system finally. I know where to go if you follow me, cause I've been reading out of hoaxology. Nothing can bother me, out of hoaxology. Won't put the screen before it's blasphemy. I won't become another mind war casualty. I came up out the realm of possibility to take the helm of this reality. Cause I've been chillin' reading out of hoaxology, rejecting all the expectations of the auto-believer, to become a new creation on the raft of receivers. Standing on the sword of truth, I step the backs of deceiver, demanding burdens for the proof from all the hacks and believers. I stepped away from the game entirely, I won't be caught up in the lame dichotomy. I stepped away from the cage entirely, I'm free today and my mind's been set by reading auto hoaxology, out of the control system finally. I know where to go if you follow me, cause I've been reading auto hoaxology. Nothing can bother me, auto hoaxology. Won't put the screen before it's blasphemy. I won't become another mind war casualty. I came up out the realm of possibility to take the helm of this reality. Cause I've been chillin' reading auto hoaxology, suspending all the judgment, you won't get a reaction. Won't defend it, I won't budge until I get all the facts in. I won't argue with the bots about the next current thing.